My name's Deanna Polk. I'm an RN with Public Health Nursing Certification and a Master's of Science in Homeland Security with a specialization in Science and Technology. I'm also all but thesis for a Master's of Science in Public Health for Global Emergency Preparedness and Response. I was a disaster medical assistance team nurse, part of the federal response for disasters in the United States and its territories. And my thesis was on civilian-military collaboration for humanitarian assistance and disaster response. I was charged with forming the first decontamination response team at Scripps La Jolla Hospital in 2002, which entailed me taking hazmat operational level training. There's different levels of training in hazmat. You have awareness, operational, and then beyond that. So it's quite extensive training in that regard. I've been involved in international disaster response and designing disaster exercises and trying to think of, I've worked with the city, the county, the state, and federal levels. So I've worked with all of the jurisdictions within San Diego County on up to a global level. Working from both a homeland security perspective, but also from a public health, global health perspective. And my focus is on collaboration, interagency collaboration, civilian-military collaboration, because when a disaster hits, and it's not a matter of if, but when one does, what hits us here can impact the other side of the globe as well. So we need to form relationships with people outside of our comfort zone and learn what each other does. So that's been the focus of my work for the last 14 years. My last position was I was the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for the Council of Community Clinics, which was about 100 clinics located throughout San Diego, Imperial, and Riverside counties. Budget cuts happened and I got laid off. During that time, we had what we call a songs alert. Part of my responsibility in that position was to carry a pager, an emergency phone, and I carried it with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that if something happened, I would go through part of the response, which would be to report to the Medical Operations Center, which is part of the county's Emergency Operations Center, which is our part of our integrative response to whatever hazard or disaster. And it was a songs alert. San Onofre Nuclear Generation Station. So I hear songs and I immediately think, hopefully it's just an error. But the other is 3 Mile Island. I remember how I felt. I was driving near San Onofre when I heard the radio news about 3 Mile Island. Nuclear safety has been a focus of mine throughout my life, basically, since I became aware of our society. And it's always been a balance of safety versus economics. I've never been real thrilled with the safety systems we've had in place. Even as a teenager, I saw holes in it. I was concerned about San Onofre when my son was in diapers, and I actually took him there. He's now 38 years old, so I've been aware of the risks associated with this one particular plant and others across the country for most of my adult life. In January of 2012, when we had the alert that there was something awry at the San Onofre Nuclear Generation Station, I checked in and was told I didn't need to go to the Medical Operations Center, that it was under control. So part of my responsibility is going to the emergency management meetings. We have on several levels, the Hospital Preparedness Committee, the Public Health meetings, the Hospital Unified Disaster meetings, and the Office of Emergency Services meeting, where all the different agencies meet and report. When I heard that they shut down San Onofre, I knew that was serious because they don't do that lightly. It's very expensive. And the fact that they've had it shut down for so long has given me great pause. Now, in light of the horrors of Fukushima, we can't take anything lightly. And so that's why I've decided to speak out just to what I know about as far as emergency preparedness in relation to a radiological event in San Diego and Orange counties, but my expertise is within San Diego County. From a national security standpoint, we've got a nuclear generation station that's has some issues with it. It's been admitted it's got problems. It's shut down right now. And we've got it located in the vicinity of thousands of Marine Corps troops and families. If something happened, some of my concerns with San Onofre right now is the fact that it was built on earthquake faults, and there are other earthquake faults offshore that they're still trying to map. Some of these faults are known as thrust faults, and it's been said to withstand those. But there is talk of a possible subduction fault off the coast, and if that's the type of fault where the plates, one would move under another and cause, the type of flow for a tsunami, a displacement for a tsunami type of way. Generally, we're not worried that much about it here in San Diego, but the plant is located right on the water's edge in proximity to several earthquake zones. And with the swarm of earthquake activity we've had in Southern California the past couple of years, that gives me concern. I have concerns, geologically, but also from a national security perspective. San Onofre is located near a major highway. We have thousands of Marine Corps troops that are needed within a few miles of the plant itself. The fact that we have Mexico to the south, and if something happened, we've got an international border to deal with, we've got military bases to deal with, not to mention a hugely diverse civilian population. And we have some of the most diverse population of anywhere in the country with the amount of refugees that we have, farm workers, and these people, English is not their first language. So I worry about emergency preparedness getting out to the average person and having, do they know what to do and how safe they are. We've got populations from Burma, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, African nations, several African nations, that we do not have the funding, have not had the funding to get the education out in all of these languages. That's just one human aspect of what we're dealing with. In the matter of evacuation, we have one route north, basically, and one route east. And to the south, we have an independent, country that has a secure border. So with the way San Onofre is located, our prevailing winds are onshore. So a release with the onshore winds would blow that radiation most likely up toward the mountains. So between the mountains and the coast, we've got millions of people we need to deal with, and not a way to evacuate them, in a timely manner, because the radiation, spreads so quickly. So those are some of my concerns when the NRC is talking about their risk assessment being done. They're only mandated to do 10 miles around their facility. And when they're asked about evacuation plans and response, they say, oh, we have an integrated response. Well, true. We do have, San Diego County and Orange County have got some of the best collaborative responses due to the fact that we've had so many fires in the past several years. We've learned how to work together. However, we do not have the money for detection equipment at our hospitals. And with HRSA funding being eliminated, basically, our hospitals do not have the money to keep ongoing staff trained. So yes, our hospitals have done a great job with learning about how to respond and how to protect the hospitals. But I wonder, like, because of the way our response is, if something happens, it goes to the Emergency Operations Center, and from there it goes out to the Medical Operations Center. From there they notify the Emergency Preparedness Coordinators at the hospital. That takes time. And if those people aren't available, who do they have to back them up? And facilities may say, oh yes, we have a team, we have people trained, but do you have enough people trained? Do you have people trained at night? Does your security, your maintenance workers, your nutrition workers, the people that are going to be there when all of the managers are gone, do they know what to do? And most likely, I can tell you, is no, they do not, because the hospitals are strapped for funding as it is, and they have to deal with what their preeminent thing is: disease and healing people. And like I said, they've done a wonderful job, but when it comes to radiological, we are not prepared. None of the clinics that people would go to have training in radiological. Yes, we do for flood, fire, and earthquakes, but radiological, we do not have. Everyone refers to what we call hazmat. That's the fallback. Everybody says, let's call hazmat. We don't have enough people hazmat trained. And in a response, you need firefighters, you need police officers, you need sheriffs, and because of road closures or evacuation assistance, have these people been trained in radiological responses? And I can tell you, no. And that to me poses a threat. If something did happen at San Onofre, and we did have a large release, we could become economically a dead zone. Businesses would leave. I think about the problems you have in evacuation with international travelers, with students whose parents don't live here. You've got all these agencies that have to get involved in, the State Department and other interstate agencies, and it becomes quite complex in trying to evacuate an area such as San Diego that has become so diversified and so global. Also the effects on the ocean and with our currents, and where that radiation would go from there. So for the cost, the amount of electricity that this plant is providing us, it's not cost effective. The $900 million that Edison has spent on these failed steam generators could have been put for really boosting up our emergency preparedness. I just think it's time for it to be decommissioned. From a terrorist perspective, I don't even want to give you the details on what I see as risks, but there are risks there. Outside of that 10 miles that the NRC has jurisdiction for, the rest is FEMA. So people need to start asking FEMA what they have, what they have for preparation in the area. And down to details, down to, you go out of your house, where would you go? What would you do if you heard there was a release? My concern is also what we call the worried well overwhelming our hospitals. Even if it wasn't a valid release, if someone hears there's a false alarm, hospitals, and people immediately go to hospitals or their clinics, and that right there can shut us down. If there's another emergency